Life requires benevolence to have confidence. Here are 3 lines. The first one is, so is the superior man affected towards animals, that having seen them alive, he cannot bear to see them die. Having heard their dying cries, he cannot bear to eat their flesh. Therefore he keeps away from slaughterhouse and cookroom. This anecdote of staying far from the kitchen comes from here. This story is still about Xuanwang. Whenever Mencius found an opportunity, he wanted to stimulate Xuanwang's innate sense of self-esteem. One day, Xuanwang sat there and saw someone leading a cow, which was trembling as it was being led. Before a cow dies, it knows it's going to die, so it shivers. Xuanwang asked, "Why are you taking this cow?" The people said, "To use its skin for a drum. It's like making a large drum, killing a cow, and splattering its blood on it. Probably that kind of thing." Then Xuanwang took a look and said, "This is too pitiful. Forget it. Forget it. Release this cow and get a sheep instead." When the common people knew about this, they said Xuanwang was indeed a good guy. This person was too stingy to even let go of a cow, and used a sheep as a substitute. After Mencius learned about this incident, he said to Xuanwang, "How could you possibly be unwilling to let go of the cow?" Xuanwang said, "Yeah, as a rich person like me, would I be unwilling to let go of a cow? I'm just kidding." Mencius said, "No, I know you're inwardly compassionate. You saw this cow trembling all over and you felt sad. So why switch to a sheep? Because he hadn't seen the sheep. Without seeing the sheep, he didn't have that feeling. So he switched to a sheep. That sheep is illusory, unseen. And it's what Mencius meant by seeing them alive, cannot bear to see them die. Upon hearing their cries, cannot bear to eat their flesh. When you see it, you'll have this compassionate feeling. What does this have to do with Xuanwang's benevolent governance? Mencius later extended it slightly, saying never underestimate the tiny bit of benevolence in your heart. This slight bit of benevolence can extend from cows to people, from one person to millions. You can even imagine how those who die on the battlefield feel. If we can't bear to see a trembling cow being taken away to be killed, how can we bear to send hundreds of thousands of people to die on the battlefield? So this tiny spark, this bit of benevolence in our hearts is actually very important. Don't simply dismiss it as pretense. The difference in life lies in this tiny bit of benevolence. A man of good and noble character keeps away from slaughterhouse and cookroom embodies this meaning. The second sentence, all things are already complete in us. There is no greater delight than to be conscious of sincerity on self-examination. If one acts with a vigorous effort at the law of reciprocity, when he seeks for the realization of perfect virtue, nothing can be closer than his approximation to it. This comes from Jingsen 2 of Mencius. Sincerity is a tricky word to explain. The Song Confucians summed it up as simply sincerity. The difference in one's life lies in being sincere or not. We've talked about sweeping Tao. In that book, there's this old gentleman who cleaned toilets for over 70 years. As an entrepreneur, he swept and scrubbed, leaving everything spotless. What's the point of this story? It's about the Song Confucians' idea of sincerity. They say, 100 techniques are not as good as one sincerity. If you can put your heart and soul into it, that's getting close to enlightenment. So, all things are already complete in us. There is no greater delight than to be conscious of sincerity on self-examination. When you can approach anything with that kind of sincerity and dedication, there's nothing happier. If one acts with a vigorous effort at the law of reciprocity, when he seeks for the realization of perfect virtue, nothing can be closer than his approximation to it. Confucius talks about benevolence, and we all want to be a benevolent person. But how do we become one? Confucius said, "I wish to be virtuous, and the virtue is at hand." If you want to be a benevolent person, benevolence will come to you. But in life, it seems there are very few who seek benevolence and actually find it. Mencius gives us a shortcut. Acting with a vigorous effort at the law of reciprocity when we seek for the realization of perfect virtue. That means we should strive to practice forgiveness, and forgiveness means being tolerant toward others. If you truly want to reach the level of benevolence, you must earnestly practice the way of forgiveness. Confucius says, is it forgiveness? Is there any teaching that can serve as a lasting principle for conduct in one's whole life? Confucius replied, Surely that is to be considerate. Do not do to others what you do not want others to do to you. Well, that's enough. Mencius inherits this idea from Confucius. The third sentence, that whereby man differs from the lower animals, is but small. The mass of people cast it away, while superior men preserve it. Shun clearly understood the multitude of things and closely observed the relations of humanity. He walked along the path of benevolence and righteousness. He did not need to pursue benevolence and righteousness. This means the difference between us and animals is small, and common people often overlook it. The difference between the noble and the common is that the noble preserve that spark of goodness in their hearts. Shun is Mencius's idol. Shun walked along the path of benevolence and righteousness. He did not need to pursue benevolence and righteousness, which means whether it's practical problems in life that need solving or the theoretical and ethical challenges we face, Shun could figure them out. Why was Shun such an extraordinary person? Because he acted from benevolence and righteousness, not merely following them. This means he had benevolence and righteousness in his heart, so everything he did was natural, relaxed, and not influenced by external appearances. Many of us are involved in charitable endeavors, and many enjoy being part of charitable organizations. Always feel that I have done a lot of good things. Well, this idea may be wrong. Sometimes when we participate in these activities, we find that the person we helped actually has a greater impact on us. They can bring immense joy, happiness, and contentment to our hearts throughout the day, even for an extended period. This is called pursuing benevolence and righteousness. You're doing what you should be doing, and what you're doing is just following your heart. This is called, one should walk along the path of benevolence and righteousness. One does not need to pursue benevolence and righteousness. We're not doing it for show. We're doing it from the inside out, and this act of doing good comes from within. So it's very natural and doesn't need repayment. It's not about dressing yourself up from the outside in, it's about the inside out. However, on the other hand, I frequently contemplate the words of Mencius. It's really good for a person to be able to act with benevolence and righteousness, but we can't expect everyone to be like Shun. If a person can persist in acting with benevolence and righteousness, over time, they might naturally become someone who acts from benevolence and righteousness. And that's a different approach to practice. In fact, it's the same as the gradual and sudden approaches talked about in Zen Buddhism. Shun was like the sudden approach, understanding and grasping the essence of benevolence and righteousness all at once. We ordinary folks find it hard to immediately find the essence of benevolence and righteousness. We have to start by doing little by little. Slowly, as we keep doing it, it becomes natural, and we no longer feel like we're performing. Then it's very likely to become part of our lives.